Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our complete count kickoff. Before I begin, I do want to recognize a couple of the local elected officials that are with us and some representatives from some federal and state offices. We have Ward 5 City Councilor John Powers here with us today. John, thank you for being here. City Councilor Ira Novoselsky. Ira. We also have School Committee Member Carol Tai and School Committee Member Sue Gravelisi. We also have members, representatives from Representative Catherine Clark's office, Senator Markey's office, and Sheriff Tompkins' office. First, I want to extend my gratitude and my appreciation to Diane Colella and Dimple Rana for organizing today's event. For those of you who don't know, Dimple is our Director of Healthy Community Initiatives, and Diane is our Election Commissioner, and they are the co-leaders of Revere's Complete Count Committee. And knowing both of them as well as I do, I know that they are going to be both enthusiastic and dedicated to the work that they do, making sure that we are counted correctly. I am encouraged, certainly by the turnout of today's event. I think it's indicative of the success that we will have in making sure that every Revere resident is counted in the 2020 census. Today, more than ever, I think we have a lot of different ways to communicate. And unfortunately, I know I see some people already nodding in agreement that although we have a lot of different ways to communicate, we have a failure a lot of times to actually clearly reach people, and whether it's City Hall or some of your organizations, I think you all understand how difficult it can be to actually connect and deliver a message to residents. And so when it comes to reaching people directly, networking, building off of personal relationships is always the most effective way. And that's why all of you are here with us today. Every one of you has a direct connection to the residents of the city, and you have the opportunity and the ability to do outreach in our city. You are the people that are most uniquely positioned to communicate directly with the residents of our city. And you can help them understand how important the 2020 census is, and most importantly, that it's safe and confidential. I think that's something that a lot of people in today's day and age do struggle with. The census, as all of you know, I hope, it supports community initiatives. It aids businesses in assessing a community's vitality and civic engagement. And it helps when we plan to build schools. It helps us when we make sure that we have adequate public safety in our community. But none of that can happen if the residents of the city do not respond. So Revere has been regarded historically as a low responding community. And I think for 2020, we want to make sure that we change that standing that we have. Today, you will hear from Dimple, you'll hear from Diane, as well as Ann Williams. Ann, thank you for being here with us. Ann is a partnership specialist with the United States Census Bureau. And they're going to explain to you the different aspects of the census and the most effective methods to reach into our community and make sure that residents gain a sense of confidence and cooperation with the census process. And as people learn about the impact that the census can have on their own lives and they gain a sense of security in the process, I know that we can achieve a lot of the goals that we have set out for 2020 and beyond. Today is an important start to the work that we're doing to make sure that Revere understands how important the census is, and that there are many resources to assist our residents to answer the census, and that filling out the census is a relatively easy process. But you are the messengers of that of those words, and you are the ones that will be communicating this to the residents, and you are the most important links to our community. I hope that you take advantage of all that you'll learn today. There are plenty of resources that we have here today. There are resources online that are available, but I want to leave everyone with one important thought, which is how important the census is to the city of Revere. Our city is growing, our population is growing, but we're also growing in regional stature. And so we're seeing great things happen in the city of Revere. We've got new development, we've got new businesses opening up in our city, we're planning for a new high school, we're making significant investments in our infrastructure that have been ignored for years. And in many cases, all of these things that we're doing can be helped with federal money. And the federal dollars that get allocated from the census directly can help us meet the objectives that we have. I mentioned this at our Next Stop Revere meeting a couple weeks ago. $900 billion. $900 billion in federal money is distributed per the census. And they are an important factor in deciding where that money gets distributed. So these dollars have real consequences and real impact in our community. So every one of you, you will help make sure that Revere and the residents of Revere get their fair share. So I thank you for being here today. I am going to now turn it over to Diane Kalala and Dimple Rana, who will get into the details about the 2020 census and your role in the complete count. Thank you.
So I am going to just walk you through just a little activity that I want to show you the importance of the census and how the mayor mentioned the federal dollars that are behind and the resources that are available to our cities if everybody's counted. So before I get into that, I want to just a preview here of the agenda. I'm going to have Diane Kalala come up next, and then Ann Williams, the U.S. Census Bureau Partnership Specialist. We're going to open it up for question and answers. And we have a couple of next steps, and please join us for some wonderful cake and coffee as soon as we're over. So when you came in, you had a piece of paper that you had to fill out. It's either blue or yellow at the top, where it says Revere Counts. If you have a yellow one, please raise your hand. All right. Okay, so quite a few yellows. And if you have a blue Revere Counts handout, please raise your hand. Okay. So I want to make sure that you fill this out before you leave, but I also want to walk you through this exercise. So if you have a yellow handout, this is your city. And this is based off of 2010 figures and the difference between the yellow city and the blue city. Is there something that's kind of glaring here that you see that is a big difference from either of these cities? Does anyone want to kind of just shout out what that is? The money. Okay, the money is a big difference there. So, in addition, the Yellow City has, almost 8,000 more people. According to their census count from 2010, Yellow City also has a few more people graduating from high school or higher education. The median income of the Yellow City is slightly higher as well. But you also see that the individuals below the poverty level is about 3% higher in the Yellow City than the Blue City. But it looks like the Blue City needs some help, right? So the George Washington University's Institute of Public Policy has a website. It's called Counting for Dollars 2020. And so what one of the professors did, Andrew Revere, is that they put together money towards the census numbers and how much each state received based on their census count. So for Massachusetts, what they found is that per capita, for every person counted, there was $2,372 received in these programs, and there's others. We're going to make these handouts available for you. And so this is really important information. You also notice the difference between the yellow city and the blue city is a program called CDBG, which is it's a federal program through the Housing Urban Development federal program. And so the entitlement program here, it provides annual grants to cities that qualify if you're over 50,000, et cetera. Also, eligibility for participation as an entitlement community is based on population data that is provided by the US Census Bureau. So this data that we received after every census really matters. So go back to this chart. We have our yellow city and our blue city. So our yellow city is our neighboring Malden and Revere. And so I tried to put together two examples where you can see difference and can relate to, right? If you look at Revere, do these numbers, based on your work here in the community, do they add up? Do you see that there's more people who might be foreign-born, and there might be more people who might be living below the poverty line? I see heads shaking in the audience. Okay. So what's at stake? So if we put the numbers from the George Washington University's Institute of Public Policy towards Revere, the difference between city A and B is the population, right? And so if we put that money towards the 7,695 people Malden counted extra, that they received $18 million more in federal funds. And just particularly with their CDBG entitlement program, there's over $500,000 that Malden received, where they funded 22 public service programs, versus Revere, we funded 6. Some of the programs that Malden funded include outreach services for homeless individuals, food pantry, and increasing access for donations, and also having public service providers be part of the food pantry system there, programs for addiction services, programs for homeless, programs for people who want to be enrolled in ESL classes, and a lot more, including childcare resources. So if we broke out these numbers, right? Again, if we collected 224 additional surveys back in 2010, we could have been in a similar area with Malden. And if we look at the city of Revere, we have 6 wards. And if we divide the number of surveys, about 33 surveys in addition to what was already counted. So that's not a lot of work, right? But we can go further. We know that we want to count everybody. And so we could fund additional playgrounds, right? This number of 500,000, 70 new slots for childcare. The cost of Head Start is $7,600 per student. Additional Section 8 vouchers at rent that is comparable to our area. About $2,000 for a 2-bedroom, $2,600 for a 3-bedroom. 203 Section 8 vouchers. That can go a long way. Also supporting our special needs students and getting them the resources that they need, and our seniors as well, and having Medicare coverage, and so much more. So we're gonna highlight this as we continue going on to the presentation, but we have a lot of different resources in our community that are impacted by the census, and they're all listed up here. Public education, roads, nutrition and families, affordable housing, healthcare, political representation, again, and more. The mayor also mentioned hard-to-count communities. Revere is number 7, based on, again, the 2010 census, out of the top 20 cities where they were also hard to count. So we have a lot of people to count here in the city. We need those resources so we can get the services all of our residents need. So I wanted to make sure that we highlight the importance of this work that needs to happen between now and the end of July. Hard to count communities are our everyday people, our neighbors, right? And they are children, they are seniors, they are undocumented neighbors, they're the homeless, our non-English speakers who may also not read in their native language. And also in particular is a category called MENA, Middle Eastern and North African Americans. The census does not collect racial demographics or ethnic demographics for this category. And this is a huge population here in Revere. We do not know the true numbers of our community and our neighbors. And so we're asking all of you to help us count and have these conversations with our community that in the ethnicity section that people are actually writing in where they are from so that we can have a better representation and accurate count of our North African and Middle Eastern friends and family here. And so we're going to continue to provide this information as this process continues. I also do want to share that moving forward, we're going to have a whole listserv, a mailing communication. We're going to be working with all of the different media outlets. We're going to be on social media, getting this information out, and we also need all of you to be part of that. So please stay in touch. Please give us your email and your phone number so we can do that. And now I want to introduce to you Diane Colella, who is my co-chair for the Complete Count Committee.
Okay. Good afternoon. I wanted to provide you with an update of the activities that the team has worked on so far in preparation for the 2020 federal census. In 2018, a review of the city's address list for the last 9 years was conducted. As such, 2,145 addresses were added to the U.S. Census Bureau's address list. The addition of these addresses increases the potential revenue in congressional representation the city will receive when the resident responds to the census mailing. Each response received by the city is worth $2,300. Also, to assist the U.S. Census Bureau with hiring staff to conduct the 2020 federal census, the team mailed 1,539 flyers to voters registering from the city of Revere. Also, in with the 2020 annual city census, a letter from the mayor promoting the federal census was included, and that letter went out to 27,269 households. Most recently, the team went door knocking on Broadway and Shirley Ave to start the promoting the response of the 2020 federal census. So we went Shirley Ave and Broadway, and they also wanted to invite the local businesses to join the Complete Count Committee. Over the last 6 months, the election, the team, I keep referring to the election department, and I'm sorry because it was a team effort. We worked closely with Ann Williams, who is the partnership specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau. We visited with key stakeholders in the city to lay the groundwork for the census mailing. My staff was going to come so I could thank them publicly, but they are Jennifer Diaz, Caitlin Welsh, and Lisa Costanzo. The objective of this meeting is to inform the residents of the city of Revere that, as the mayor said, answering the 2020 federal census is safe, confidential, and easy. Every response is important and necessary. Census data provides important information used for local decision-making. It affects funding in our community. It affects our voice in Congress, and it affects our representation in state and local government. I would like to point out that the federal census is separate from the annual city census. In January, every household in the city was sent an annual city census. In March, every household will be sent an invitation to respond to the 2020 federal census. Residents should respond to both census mailings. I would like to thank you for attending this very important meeting and for becoming a participant in the 2020 Complete Count Committee. We are counting on you to help ensure that everyone in the city of Revere is counted. Over the next 4 months, I look forward to working with Dimple, alongside Dimple and with all of you folks as well. I would like to now introduce Ann Williams, Partnership Specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau. Thank you very much.
So thank you again. I'm here with the U.S. Census Bureau, and I have a little bit of history to give to you. And in this historic room, it's my pleasure because it's absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to start. We're going to have questions and comments after the presentation. So if you could hold those, that would be great. So the history part is very important because the Census Bureau is the largest statistical agency that collects information on people, places, and economies. And as Diane mentioned, you're going to have your city census, which you've already received, but the Census Bureau conducts other surveys throughout the year. So the American Community Survey is the long form of the census, and some households may receive that as well as their decennial census. Anybody here ever get one of those? It's a long form, and you do need to complete both of those. Many months ago, as Diane said, we updated our address lists, which are critical because when we send you the census invitation, it goes to every housing unit. It does not go to a person. No names appear on the mailing that you will receive. So we had to update the address list. We've had a lot of growth here in Revere as well as other places in the state. We want everyone to be counted once and only once and in the right place. And that's a big task for 330 million people that we'll be counting. But why do we do this? Because every 10 years we are mandated by our Constitution to conduct a count of every person that lives here in the United States. We've been doing it since 1790, and it's time to do it again. We've already heard why the census count is important. I also want to stress the fact that this is a community effort. You've got your schools, your healthcare programs, your elected officials, your nonprofits, your programs for new immigrant families and the homeless. All of those people count. And we need to make sure they understand that this is a safe experience for them. Material that we send to people, as I said, does not have a name, but all personal information that people reply to on the census questionnaire is protected by federal law, Title 13. This means that we cannot share any personal information with federal agencies, with the state, with immigration, with law enforcement, with the courts, or even with a landlord. This is for statistical purposes only. We take the data and we disseminate data, and that's what we use. We also want people to know that we have invested heavily in producing firewalls and controls so that people's responses online, if they choose to do that, will be protected. And for the first time in 2020, you will be able to complete your census online on the computer, over the phone, in 13 different languages. So just out of curiosity, how many people here might be interested in completing it online? That's what we're hoping. But for those people who don't have access to a computer or the internet, or who just don't feel comfortable with that method of response, we're working here with the city to plan locations where people can go and get assistance and have a computer and an internet that they can use. And Diane's going to speak about that, I think, afterward. The phone is a real person. You're going to be speaking to someone. And in 13 different languages, that's a real asset for people. If you still are not comfortable with those two methods, there will be a paper questionnaire, and people can respond via paper. It's important to note some things that the Census Bureau will never ask to help all of our friends and neighbors avoid fraud and scam. We will not ask for full Social Security numbers. We will not ask for bank account or credit card numbers, and we'll never ask for cash or payment. So again, all of you are advocates. If you hear someone in the community say, I had to pay $5 to complete my census, they need to report that to the police. That's a fraud. And we want to make sure people know who to report things to. These are the languages that the Census Bureau has put the survey online, and you can call on the phone. You probably see a lot of the languages here that your Revere residents speak. But for people who don't speak these languages, we have another grouping of languages for a total of 59 languages where people can get tips and advice or tip sheets, really, on our website. And we've just launched the feature on our website that basically has the tip sheets in Albanian and French Creole and all the languages that we've been able to identify as needing to be helped. Do you see languages here that represent your neighbors and friends? So let's talk about how you're going to get your invitation. It's going to come to your housing unit again, and it's going to be asking you to go online or use the phone. You will not get a paper questionnaire right away. We're trying to save money and save the ecology or the environment. And by doing this, you help us understand in real time how people are responding and what the results might be. So we might be able to see very quickly the kind of responses that are happening in Revere if people are going online or they're calling. If you don't respond after a few weeks, you're going to get a reminder. And again, if you still don't respond, you're going to get another reminder with the paper questionnaire. You can see this is a very short time frame, and so we're really going to be continually impressing upon people the importance of creating and collecting the information. We're going to have a robust advertising campaign, and we'll have lots of opportunities for people to hear about the census and understand what it is. When the end of April comes, if you have not completed your census, we're going to send a postcard that asks you to follow through, or we'll be sending out an enumerator. And an enumerator is someone who goes door to door into a community to collect the census information. They'll have a handheld device. They'll have a federal ID to identify them as a census worker. We'll be reaching out to our police stations and police chiefs to let them know that census workers are in the field. We'll even be able to give people a phone number to call if they're concerned about someone who's come to the door not being who they say they are. In order to get this massive peacetime operation completed, we need to hire thousands of people. I'm sure you've seen that we're hiring, but I don't know if you've seen that we're hiring people in Suffolk County for $27.50 an hour. So if you know people, we have flyers on the table in Spanish and English. Feel free to take a picture, put it on social media. These are really important jobs. They only last a short period of time, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, but they are great jobs for people who need a little extra income, need more income to support themselves and their families. So I just talked about the jobs. We also have office jobs, so it's not just enumerator jobs. It could be people who are working in our Boston office as clerks. It could be people who are field supervisors. The applications must be done online. There's no place to go to complete an application. You need to do it online. And if anyone out there has already done an application and has not heard back, I strongly encourage you to go to the phone number that's on the flyer or on our website and ask them where you are in the process, where your application is. So here we are with the Complete Count Committee, something that you have developed and that the city will benefit from greatly. One of the roles of the Complete Count Committee is to continually keep this front and center for people. I'm glad to see we have the newspaper here. You have other social media activities to promote this. And you can share this information with friends and neighbors so that they understand what's happening. I myself am available to go to speak to faith-based groups, to speak to clubs, to speak to organizations that I haven't visited yet to talk about the census. So please feel free to let me know if there are people you'd like me to reach out to. One of the ways that the Census Bureau supports our partners is by providing a lot of promotional material. You'll see a lot of that on the table out front that Diane and Dimple were able to copy and put out there. But feel free to take pictures, and bring it out to your communities. I just want to talk for a minute again about the hard-to-count communities, in particular a service that the Census Bureau has developed called the Rome or Response Outreach Area Mapper. If you look at this map, you'll see darker blue areas. Those aren't bodies of water. Those are areas that we call hard to count, places that have not been self-responding. I've pulled some information from what we call Census Tract 1707, which is part of Revere. I'm sorry it's so small, but you can see a little bit about that information. If you go online and you pull this information up, you're going to see why this area, or some of the statistics, about why this area might be hard to count. It might be hard to count because of the poverty level, or the young age. 35.5 is the median age in this census tract. Young people may not have experienced a census before or had to complete one on their own. Young people may be renting, or young families may be renters, and renters are typically hard to count. So those are some things you can learn by looking at some of this information. I'm also interested in this location, which is Census Tract 9815, which is really by Suffolk Downs. I'm assuming there's not a lot of people living in that area, but there might be new buildings there that weren't reported when this information was pulled. So I want to finish by letting you know that we have a data dissemination program. If anyone here ever writes grants, needs funding or justification for programs you're trying to work with, if you're working with veterans, if you're working with different groups or communities, this program is free to everyone, and you can actually go online and request to have data pulled for you that will help drill down to the kind of information you need. So finally, we are on social media. It's a great way to keep the word out there and going. And again, I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank the mayor and Dimple and Diane for all their help. Thanks.
So the question is regarding if people do not have online access and how they would fill out the survey. And that's a great question. So part of the plans that Diane and I are working on that we're going to release soon is that there'll be response centers throughout the city where laptops and computers will be available for those who do not have access to those at home or in other capacities. We also will be utilizing Mobile City Hall, and we'll be out in the neighborhoods and with iPads and laptops there too, so that people can fill out the survey.
I also wanted to mention, if anyone has any questions, they can always call the election department for assistance. We have information on the jobs if they need the, what's the email, what's the website, what's the phone number, how do I follow up? We have all of that. If they just want to come in and ask general questions on responding, we can help them with all of that. And I'm sure Dimple's office, reciprocal, both departments can help them accordingly.
Thanks. So that tracking nursing homes, tracking people that are incarcerated, people living in group homes, college students living on campus, those are part of our group quarters operation and count. So we'll be working directly with the directors of those programs, and they'll have the ability to do things with us online and report that way. Also, I didn't mention homeless shelters. We'll be working with homeless shelters and working with the community to identify places where people are living unsheltered so that we can get an accurate count of all of those people as well. I'm not sure about which numbers they ask for. The decennial census does not ask for the Social Security, but there are other surveys we do that might ask for part of it. So that's why I mentioned that. So it's not that. Yes. Correct. Right. That's not going to be an issue for the 2020 census. So I think we'll be okay with that. Yes, I'm happy to try. What I've been telling people and what we've been told is that check what you're comfortable with. You can check multiple boxes, But if nothing there represents you, you can write it in. And you can write multiple things. So that's what my suggestion would be for her, to do that. And your first question, household versus address. We call it housing unit because within one house, let's say, there might be several apartments. If you have a separate mailing address for each of those, then that's counted separately. If it's one house that has one mailing address, they will get one census response. They'll be able to do one questionnaire for everybody that lives there. Does that make sense? Yes. Per address, correct. Yes, correct. Yes, household is not necessarily the best term to use. You're right about that, especially with people with multiple families living in different, one all together, but in different places, yeah. Thank you.
How do you plan to cut up certain sections? Say, for example, Beachmont. How will that be cut up into sections for the survey?
Are you talking about redistricting? Redistricting. Who would like to address that?
That happens after the 2020 federal census, probably in 2021. The redistricting process will start, and that's governed by the state. So the state will provide the maps, and they will show us the growths and the declines, and then we would get together with the city council, and we would make a plan on how to work within the parameters of the state's instructions, and so that the councilors would be happy with that as well.
Get the paper form right away. And what if I don't want to do phone, I don't want to do online, I just want paper. Mm-hmm. So would there be a phone call first, or how does that work?
No, in order, so the question was, how do you, if you don't want to use the computer or phone, can you request an early copy of the paper questionnaire? And I would say you should just wait until the questionnaire comes, because we want to make sure we do have integrity about how many of these we're sending out, so that your address is the only address you will use. So you'll just have to wait. Yeah. And I wanted to say one thing that I neglected to say. I see one of our young people just walked in, and in 2010, the census estimates that about 1 million children between the ages of birth and 5 were undercounted. So it's critical that people know if they have a young child that is born on April 1st is our kind of census day. If they're born when you have the census, then you need to count them. And with fluid families, children living in different locations, sometimes with non-relatives, even if they're not your child and they're living in your housing unit, you need to count them.
I just want to quickly add to about the MENA question again, that this is also a sensitive piece for this community. And again, the census is safe and confidential, and we are asking people to be honest and to report correctly, and especially around this data, so that we can really provide the resources through federal funds to assist everybody. And so if we don't know who lives in our community and how many of those people, then we're not going to necessarily be able to help in the best way. And so the racial category for North African and Middle Eastern, people can right now self-select how they want to identify. Many people do identify as white or African American, or sometimes even just leave it blank. But under ethnicity, it's really important to fill out your country of birth or where you originated from before you arrived in the United States, so that information is really captured, so that we can know how many people from Morocco, how many people from Algeria, how many people from Egypt and other places live here in the city. I know that there's several groups here in the audience too right now that have been doing some preliminary outreach and wanting to make sure that the community is aware of this. And so we're going to continue to bring this information out and work with each other so that we can do this, so that people know that there's trusted leaders here in the community, that, again, the census is safe and confidential. So we're going to close off, and, one more question.
You think that a robocall out to the community to let them know that the census is being taken, so people will be aware of that?
Yes, so there's a question here about a robocall being sent out throughout the city so people know that the census is now on and that they should fill it out. Yes, that is going to be part of our community engagement and outreach for the city. And again, we have lots of things that we're going to be doing, small things that you can also do on your emails. On your signature, you can also say, take the census with the link to the census so that, as you're sending out emails, people are seeing that information. If you're interested in being in front of the camera and doing a short PSA so that we can share it on social media so that people who especially know our leaders here in the community can relate and say, hey, that person says this is important. I think I'm going to really do this. So we're really going to try to go beyond some traditional community engagement efforts and really try to work with our communities to make sure we're all counted. So again, if you filled out the questionnaire as you came in, please make sure you leave it with us so that we can stay in touch. There's a number of ways you can be involved, including being a host site for a resource center. So again, that means that you would open up your office or location to have computers available so people can walk in and take the census there.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. That's really critical. So every census employee is sworn to an oath of confidentiality for life, which is one of the reasons why we ask community groups, volunteers, not to go door to door to take a census for the government, because you're not sworn to the oath. So we want everyone to know that we are taking this very, very seriously on so many different levels. So thank you.
Okay, any last questions before we close the program? Great. Diane, myself, Ann are also available. We'll be here, and please help yourself to some delicious cake and some coffee, and also get to know each other. There's some really great people here in the room, and I think we can really work well together in making sure everybody's counted here in the city. Thank you.